All right. Sorry, I had to adjust my chair there. My cushion like fell down as I was going live. All right, let me just make sure everything is locked and loaded. Then we will officially begin. I got to make sure everything's up and at 'em, and I'll let people trickle in. We are a minute or two early. Rockfin is awake. YouTube is awake. All right, and of course we got Twitter. All right, everyone is awake. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone in my time zone. Good morning, and happy future to everyone in the future, Australia, New Zealand. How's everything going? And to everyone checking out the podcast later. I hope you are well. I hope everything's going great. And leave a 5-star review, would you? Leave a 5-star. Leave me 5 stars and a nice review. I'd really appreciate that to all the podcast listeners. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, the headline show. I'm going to go through a couple headlines today. And I've been up for a while. I'll let you know that real quick. I've been up for a minute because I was doing radio this morning on a show that's based in Toronto. So it was a Toronto morning show, and I live in California. So I've been up a while. I didn't go back to bed. That's okay. I don't know. Every now and again, it's nice to mix things up. And why was I doing that? Well, because I'm hitting the road soon. I'll plug the tour dates. April 16th, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. April 18th, Toronto. April 20th, Ottawa. April 21st, Montreal. April 22nd, Burlington, Vermont. April 23rd, Portland, Maine. April 24th, Boston, Mass. And April 25th, New York City, baby. Get your tickets now. Don't wait. Romplacone.com. Grish Moen is opening those shows, and Lauren Ashcraft will be on the show in Pittsburgh and New York. And Jill Stein is going to join me for a tune in Boston. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. There's going to be some special guests in all the different cities. Romplacone.com. Can't wait to see you on the road. All right, so today's show, we're going to start with the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. That's the what is casually known as the Don't Say Gay bill. Now, I'm going to start by saying a lot of policy in the United States works against people, and it's written in a very misleading way. That's something we see all the time. The SMART Act is anything but smart. The Safe Tech Act is anything but safe or good for tech. The Earn It Act does not protect children. It does the opposite. The JCPA does not preserve journalism. It guts journalism. Need I go on? The Patriot Act, how'd that one turn out? The Telecommunications Act in 1996. Did the Act for Media Diversity help with media diversity, or did it completely homogenize the media? You tell me. This is common in the United States. Another thing that happens in the United States is sometimes when a bill comes out that is controversial, people will kind of hyper focus on one part of it, and then they'll interpret that one part in different ways, and they'll bicker about that. And usually, both sides are not totally accurate with what actually is going on in the bill. And then you read the entire bill and you realize, hey, this bill's terrible. And that piece that you're focusing on isn't even like the main nucleus here. That's not even like the really big part to be concerned about. That's what happens quite frequently. Which brings us to the quote, Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Now, I tweeted about this bill and I said that this bill is disgusting. I do think it's disgusting. Why do I think it's disgusting? Well, for the same reason Dennis Kucinich voted against the Patriot Act. I read it. I read the bill. And we're going to go through what I find objectionable in it, because a lot of people, they're focusing on, so it became casually referred to as the Don't Say Gay bill. Now, people will point out, and this is the truth, that they'll say, it doesn't say don't say gay. That's not in there. There's nothing in that bill that says don't say the word gay. All right, that is in the literal sense true. That's cool. And then other people that are supporting the bill, they'll say things like, no, it just has to do with you can't teach sex education or things about sex to kids between kindergarten and third grade, which That's not exactly what it says either, by the way. It's not about sex ed. And we're going to go through that in more detail in a little bit. But hold that thought for just a second. Um, if that was all the bill was about, you can't teach sex ed to kids that are kindergarten through third grade. The first question I would have, and the first question I did have when I did a deeper dive into all this, I read the bill before I tweeted about it, by the way. But initially, I wanted to do a deeper dive. And, if that was all it was about, my first question would be, well, are they teaching sex ed to kids that are kindergarten through third grade? Is that happening in the state of Florida? And if so, I mean, I would say that's way too young. I think most people would agree that's too young for something like that. That sex ed, yeah, if you're in kindergarten, first or second or third grade, that's way too young for something like that. It should be older. I mean, one could argue middle school versus high school. That's a debate that's been had for a long time. But I think most people would agree that kindergarten through third grade is too young for that sort of thing. I know that when I was in school, it was middle school or high school when you got sex ed. In my case, it was technically never because I went to a Catholic school. Um, I will tell the real quick aside story of my sex ed experience after this. But first, so my first question was, well, is that actually happening? If that was what the bill's about, is that even a thing? Well, here's a little bit of a of background about sex ed in Florida in general. Okay, this is Florida's sex ed snapshot. So Florida doesn't even have here. Sex education is not currently mandated in Florida, so schools don't even need to teach it. Schools that do teach sex education must emphasize abstinence as the expected social standard, which, by the way, I don't know all the ins and outs of the quote abstinence only curriculum, but if you're just telling kids don't have sex, it's bad, that's not sex education. All right. That's not, if you're not teaching them about how sex works, about their bodies, that's not sex education. That's just, I mean, that would be like going to math class. And in math class, they're just like, use a calculator or ask someone smarter than you. Class dismissed. Math class time, avoid math. That's what abstinence only sex education sounds like. Hey, welcome to sex education. Don't have sex. All right, that's not sex education. That's just, pummeling children with, how you want them to behave, basically. So, all right, so that's the standard in Florida. You're not required to teach sex education to children. School districts are left to decide what type of sex education, if any at all, they provide to youth. And what it goes on to say in this legislation here, this state profile mandating local control over sex education presents unique challenges. Blah 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 blah. So that's what the standard actually is in Florida when it comes to sex education, as far as I know. So I was not able to find any situations where sex ed was being taught in kindergarten through third grade. Um, it'd be hard for me to imagine something like that happening. If it has happened, I'm not aware of that. So I guess it's fair to say maybe there's a lot more to this bill than that for the people who are trying to downplay this bill. And guess what? There is. So now we're going to go to the bill itself. People responded to me. They said, Ron, you're opposed to this bill. What in it are you opposed to? I'm about to show you. All right, so here we go. We're going to go to the bill itself, and we're going to start on page 3 when the legislation begins. Okay. In accordance with the rights of parents enumerated and blah, 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 adopt procedures for notifying a student's parent if there is a change in the student's services or monitoring related to the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well being, and the school's ability to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for the student. Let's stop right there. That is extremely broad. Extremely broad. We got to notify students' parents if there's a change in the student's services. Well, what could that refer to? That could refer to maybe that student goes to see a counselor that specializes in helping LGBTQ students. That could refer to a student is being bullied for whatever reason. That could refer to a great number of things, and the parents, they got to be kept in the loop on everything right away, regardless of how the student feels, by the way. And we're going to get more in depth to that here soon. The procedures must reinforce the fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children by requiring school district personnel to encourage a student to discuss issues relating to his or her well being with his or her parent, or to facilitate discussion of the issue with the parent. So, again, how the student feels doesn't matter. The parents got to be in on all this. The procedures may not prohibit. Now, here's the disclaimer that they lean on here. And we're going to talk about this because this is important. The procedures may not prohibit parents from accessing any of their students' education and health records created, maintained, or used by the school district. So basically, the parents have carte blanche here. A school district may not adopt procedures or student support forms that prohibit school district personnel from notifying a parent about his or her student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, or a change in related services or monitoring. Again, incredibly broad. That basically means you inform the parents on everything, regardless on how the student feels, or that encourage or have the effect of encouraging a student to withhold from a parent such information. School district personnel may not discourage or prohibit parental notification of or involvement in critical decisions affecting a student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being. Now, I think this is the disclaimer. Okay, so this is the disclaimer they lean on. And we're going to talk about this. This subparagraph does not prohibit a school district from adopting procedures that permit school personnel to withhold such information from a parent if a reasonably prudent person would believe that disclosure would result in abuse, abandonment, or neglect, as those terms are defined. So that disclaimer is there. Yes, I'll give you that. That disclaimer's in there. But that disclaimer, unlike all the other stuff, is very kind of, how do you prove that? How do you pinpoint that? And it's one of those things where, let's talk a scenario. Let's say there is a child who is gay or transgendered, and they want to seek help from a counselor that specializes in those things. The parent needs to be notified pretty much no matter what. And it doesn't matter the circumstance, even if it might not be something that the student wishes, even if the student wishes to have confidentiality. Maybe they're confused. Maybe they don't know where to turn. Maybe they feel helpless. But the parent, I mean, basically, unless a student says, hey, my parents are beating the shit out of me because they think I'm gay or something like that, the counselor or whoever, whatever other adult authority figure is involved here, needs to be kind of looking over their shoulder, thinking, gee, am I allowed to try to help this kid, really? So that's what else is in this bill. It really takes away confidentiality for students. And who's targeted here? We all know who: LGBTQ students. It makes it harder for them to get resources, not easier. It makes it harder. Now, here's the part. Now we're to the part that everyone is focusing on. This is the people make it out like this is what the entire bill is about. Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3, or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. Okay, this is what everyone's focusing on. People are saying, well, it doesn't say don't say gay. You're right. The words don't say gay are not in there. You're right. Okay. You know what else isn't in there? Sex education. This has nothing to do with not teaching sex education to kids that are in K through third grade. Has nothing to do with saying, hey, you can't teach sex education. That's not in there either. So it seems like people who are justifying this bill and people who are just harping on this one section in the bill, and neither of them are accurately representing what's being said here. And what is being said: classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation. Well, what does that mean, instruction exactly? Does that mean if a teacher's gay and they have a picture of them and their spouse, and a student says, oh, well, what is that? Do they need to lie? Do they need to say, oh, that's my roommate? Because that's not a hetero marriage there. they have to tiptoe around who they are? What's wrong with just saying, "Yeah, I'm gay and gay people exist." What's wrong with saying that to a student? I mean, I learned about gay people at a very young age because my family, close family friends of ours, who are still some of our best friends to this day, were a gay couple. And when I was young, like so many kids in elementary school, especially, growing up when I grew up. I don't know if kids do it as much anymore. I'd like to think they don't, but you would say, "That's gay. That's gay." And that meant something was stupid or was just basically a negative statement. "That's gay." And I said that once. And I said it in front of my mom. And she said, "Do you know what that means?" And I said, "Well, it just means it's stupid." And she said, "No, that's not what it means." And you know that. And she said, "The friends of ours." And she said, "They're gay. They're gay. So why are you saying that?" And she taught me what it meant that people are gay. She didn't go into some great detail like, "Oh, and here's how they have sex." Like, it wasn't sex. Teaching children that gay people are people and that exists in the world is not sex education. It's teaching them about the world around them and teaching them about different kinds of people. And you know what happened after that? I stopped calling things gay. I stopped doing that because I grew up a little bit. And then here you have the second part of this, or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. Well, what the hell does that mean? How do you determine what is or isn't age appropriate? How do you interpret that? That could be interpreted many different ways. And you know who's going to interpret it? A court of law in frickin' Florida. That's who's going to. That's who's going to. That's who's determining what is or isn't age appropriate, whatever that means. So that's what's really in this bill, folks. That's what's really in this bill. Now let's go on. There's more to it. Student support services, training developed or provided by a school district to school district personnel must adhere to student. Okay, well that's pretty standard. Now here's an interesting one. Number 5 here. At the beginning of the school year, each school district shall notify parents of each healthcare service offered at their student's school and the option to withhold consent or decline any specific service. Parental consent to a healthcare service does not waive the parent's right to access his or her student's educational or health records. Again, the parents have carte blanche, regardless of how the student feels, unless they can somehow prove abuse or be notified about a change in their student services. Again, parents get to know everything, regardless of how a student feels, regardless of confidentiality a student may want or need, unless you can prove abuse. There's that one little disclaimer there, and you'd have to be able to prove it. And who would be making these decisions? Again, a court of law in Florida. So what does that mean? Let's go back to the top. At the beginning of the school year, each school district shall notify parents of each healthcare service offered at their student's school and the option to withhold or consent or decline a specific service. Let's break down what that really means, folks. What that means. Hey, here's a counselor that specializes in helping LGBTQ students. I don't want my kids seeing that person. That's what that means. And maybe a parent's going to do that. And maybe their kid's gay or trans, and they're not going to get to see that person who might be able to help them. That's what that means. That is what that means. Number 6, before administering a student well-being questionnaire or health screening to a student in kindergarten through grade 3, the school district must provide the questionnaire or health screening form to the parent and obtain the permission of the parent. I don't have as strong of a feeling on that particular one. I think for the most part, when you're that young, I don't know what they would ask on a health screening that parents may or may not object to. But even that, why do parents need to see that? Um, I mean, unless they're asking some outrageous questions, but otherwise, I don't think all that needs to be disclosed to parents. I think again, this is an overreach. Each school district shall adopt procedures for a parent to notify the principal or his or her designee regarding concerns under this paragraph, blah, blah, blah. Okay. At a minimum, the procedures must require that within 30 days of the parent that the concern remains unsolved, the school district must either resolve the concern or provide a statement. Now, this gets good. If a concern is not resolved by the school district, a parent may request the commissioner of education to appoint a special magistrate who is a member of the Florida bar in good standing, who has at least blah, 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 blah. Basically, they can sue the school. All right. Bring an action against the school district to obtain a declaratory judgment that the school district procedure or practice violates this paragraph and seek injunctive relief. Okay. So basically, they're saying you need to tell the parents everything. The parents can have access to whatever when it comes to their children. The parents can deny their children any services that they might not want their child to have. And they get carte blanche on everything unless you could really prove that these kids would be abused by their parents otherwise, which would be incredibly hard to make a case for in a court of law. And Florida knows that. The people behind this bill know that. And that's what's really in this bill. So, yes, the literal phrase, don't say gay, is not in this bill. That's true. So to everyone who thought they were some Sherlock by the words don't say gay, right? Yeah, but there's still a million other reasons to oppose this bill. Because what this bill does at the end of the day, it makes it harder for LGBTQ students to get the resources and help and support that they'll need. And it's deliberate and it's on purpose. And, I have, I have transgender friends. I'm sure a lot of us do. And I have no idea what it's like to be transgendered. I have no idea what it's like to be gay. I can't imagine. I'm a straight white dude, so I can't imagine any of those things. I can only imagine. But one thing that I've noticed consistently, um, via transgendered friends of mine who are my age or around my age, is they all wish that there was more help available to them when they were younger. A lot of them, they didn't know what was going on with them. They didn't know. They knew something was wrong. They didn't feel right. They didn't know how to designate it or qualify it. Then they learned more, and they were able to handle things better and to find out who they were and to find out how to basically how to deal with their lives more or less. So this idea that you're going to make things even harder instead of moving forward as a society where there are more resources available to children, and instead making it harder, going backwards, making it more difficult for them, being more authoritarian towards the whole thing. That's terrible. And how could anybody support such a thing? Why? Why would you support such a thing? Why would you support such a thing that makes it even more difficult for LGBTQ students than they already freaking have it? So that's what's really in this bill. It has nothing to do with, oh no, it's just you can't teach sex ed to first graders. You can't teach that's not, no, that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. It's about making it harder for LGBTQ students to access any resources that might be able to help them. That's what it's about. So that's my opposition to this bill. That's why I'm opposed to this bill. And when you read between the lines, and by the way, you have to interpret this stuff. A lot of this stuff taken on its surface, it's like, well, it doesn't sound that bad. Yeah, people said that about the Patriot Act. People said that about the Telecommunications Act in 1996. People probably said that about the crime bill. And then you You roll this stuff out, you see it work, you see it go and play, and you see what it really does. And that's what this bill would do. So that's my take on it. That is my take on this horrible bill. Now we're going to go to some better news, the IPCC report. You know what? This is actually interesting. We're going to just go again, kind of like what we just did. Instead of looking at whatever clickbaity headlines are there, we're going to go straight to the source. For the Don't Say Gay bill, we went straight to the source, straight to the bill itself. We're going to do that here, and we're going to go straight to the IPCC report. Now, this is the report that came out a few days ago that said, hey, we got to act, and we got 3 years to really start this thing. Now, here's an interesting component. Not all, at least in my opinion, I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a subjective component here. Not all of the IPCC report was 100% bad. And I'm not trying to downplay it. When I say this, I don't mean like actually everything's going to be fine. I just mean there was some stuff in there that indicates that some of the stuff we're doing is helping. That even the minimal efforts we're making is making a bit of a difference, and we can still mitigate this thing. I mean, we can still take bold action that's going to give us a livable future. We're not going to quote prevent climate change. Climate change is here. But again, like scientist Peter Kalmus, who's on this show somewhat, sometimes, which I think he was actually part of an action yesterday where a bunch of people got arrested. But anyway, it's like he says, he's like, it's like an elevator and you can control how far we go up. We can do something about how far we go up. But it's interesting they didn't harp on any of the good parts. And I think that's because, that's not going to be a very clicky headline, right? I mean, if you're just like, hey, some of the stuff we're doing is actually helping. Who wants to read that article? That's not fun. I want to hear about how I'm going to be underwater soon. And B, people want to feel like taking action isn't going to help. So when you're saying actually what little we're doing now is helping, and if we actually made a frickin' effort, we could really do something, that puts pressure on the fossil fuel industries. That puts pressure on the oil and gas companies. That puts pressure on the top bottom solution that we need, because we're finding out that, yes, we can make a difference. But anyway, let's go to the thing, because again, as I'm saying, it's not as bad. It's not 100% bad. Of course, it's not 100% good either. There's a lot of disturbing stuff in here. But we'll start at the beginning. The evidence is clear. The time for action is now. We can have emissions by 2030. All right. So in 2010 to 2019, average annual global greenhouse gas emissions were at their highest levels in human history. But the rate of growth has slowed. Without immediate and deep emissions reduction across all sectors, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is beyond reach. However, there is increasing evidence of climate action, said scientists. Which means, hey, what little we're doing, we're making a minimal effort. And even that is making a difference, which means if we don't really take bold action on climate change, and we don't really, contain this thing to the best of our ability, it's a policy choice. It doesn't have to be this way. That's what that tells us. The fact that we are seeing some results from the minimal efforts we are making as a society, that proves if we actually frickin' try. It's like one of those students who doesn't study for the test at all, and they get a frickin' C. And they're like, well, I got a C. I'm just not a great student. Yeah, you got a C without applying yourself at all. If you actually applied your frickin' self, you could get an A. They want you to believe that society can't get an A, but here we are. Scientists are telling us, hey, you didn't apply yourselves really much, if at all, and you got a C. So if you actually frickin' do something, you could get that A. Again, it's not going to prevent climate change. We're here. But it's going to basically assure a livable future. And we're going to be able to adapt, and we're going to be able to blah, 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 blah. All right. So, since 2010, there has been sustained decreases of up to 85% in the cost of solar and wind energy and batteries. An increasing range of policies and laws have enhanced energy efficiency, reduced rates of deforestation, and accelerated the deployment of renewable energy. All right, so they're leading us off with a little bit of good news. It's a compliment sandwich, so to speak, sort of. We are at a crossroads. The decision we make now can secure a livable future. We have the tools and know-how required to limit warming, excuse me. That's the message the oil and gas companies don't want you to hear. The decisions we make now can secure a livable future. We have the tools and know-how required to limit warming. Wall Street does not want you to hear that. Wall Street wants you to think there's really nothing we can do. Eventually, we'll figure something out. Technology might bail us out. And in the meantime, who gives a shit? Whatever. I am encouraged by climate action being taken in many countries. There are policies, regulations, and market instruments that are proving effective. If these are scaled up and applied more widely and equitably, they can support deep emissions reductions and stimulate innovation. We don't need to live like it's a dystopia and we're on horseback again. It doesn't have to be that way. We can get off of fossil fuels. There are alternative means of energy that we can master. We've done it before in human history many times. We'll do it again. If we can fit the technology to make a movie in our pockets, which we can, the phone in my pocket has the technology to make a freaking movie. If we could do that, we can get off of fossil fuels. Okay, we have options in all sectors to at least half emissions by 2030. Limiting global warming will require major transitions in the energy sector. This will involve the substantial reduction in fossil fuel use, widespread electrification, improved energy efficiency, and use of alternative fuels such as hydrogen. Having the right policies, infrastructure, and technology in place to enable changes in our lifestyle and behavior can result in a 40 to 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This offers significant untapped potential. Cities and other urban areas also offer significant opportunities for emission reductions. These can be achieved through lower energy consumption by creating compact, walkable cities. Now, here's the part that people are harping on that is definitely heavy news, but important. In the scenarios, the next few years are critical. In the scenarios we assess, limiting warming to around 1.5 degrees Celsius requires global greenhouse gas emissions to peak before 2025 at the latest and be reduced by 43% by 2030. At the same time, methane would also need to be reduced by about a third. Even if we do this, it is almost inevitable that we will temporarily exceed this temperature threshold, but could return to below it by the end of the century. It's now or never. If we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius without immediate and deep emissions reductions across all sectors, it'll be impossible. So we got to peak by 2025. That's what they're saying. They're like, we got to start changing now, and we can't by 2025. Things need to frickin' be different. That's what that's really saying. And that, of course, is the part people are really emphasizing, and justifiably so. That part is really important. But the part that they don't want you to know is that we can frickin' do this. It's not hopeless. We're still going to feel some effects of climate change, yes, but we can adapt, and we have the tools at our disposal. We have the tools to change our lifestyle habits, to change the way we do commerce, to change the way we work, to change the way we go about our relationships with our cities, to change the way our logistic needs are met. And that involves a little bit of everything. That involves ending factory farming because it's terrible for the environment and it's not necessary. Changing our food culture on a massive level. And yes, that can be done. There is more than enough farmland to do it. And we're all ready making the food. We throw away more food that could feed a bunch of people. We throw it away. Why? Because under capitalism, you got to make money off the food. And if it's not profitable, you get rid of it. That's capitalism, baby. So we can do this many times over. And it involves, there will be some technology involved. Yes, that will be part of the solution too. Although these things like carbon capture, they are at best drops in the buckets right now. So you can't rely on it. You can acknowledge that technology will play a role, but technology will not be the sole focus. You can't just rely on technology to bail us out. And they've given us a freaking timeline. They said 3 years, it's got to change. By 3 years, it's got to change. But we have the tools to do it. And if we use those tools, we can halve emissions by 2030. So it's interesting that the IPCC report, if you actually read it, it's not quite as doom and gloom as the headlines made it sound. The sense of urgency is absolutely freaking there. And yes, we got 3 years to start acting. We got 3 years. We're making a minimal effort, and we're seeing results from it. Even that minimal effort, we're seeing some results. But we got 3 years to make a big effort. We got 3 years to at least study for a B. We're making C's now. We're really sitting on our ass. We got 3 years to at least get up to that B, and we can do it. But we can't keep jagging around. We can't keep not applying ourselves and getting C's. We can't just keep it, stay the course, make the gasoline-powered cars, drive the big old Hummer that gets 6 miles to the gallon. Don't do anything. Don't change anything. We can't keep doing that. We got to have significant systemic shifts that begin by 2025. And that's a big ask. That's not going to be easy, but it has to happen, and it can happen. It can happen. We have the tools. We just simply got them. So that's what's really going on in the IPCC report. And here's what's interesting. It basically says, without saying it, how capitalism is really the issue here. So look at this part. This is kind of the end. Closing investment gaps. The report looks beyond technologies and demonstrates that while financial flows are a factor of 3 to 6 times lower than levels needed by 2030 to limit warming to below 2.2 degrees Celsius, there is sufficient global capital and liquidity to close investment gaps. In other words, we can pay for this. We're just choosing not to. There's no issue as, oh, we can't pay for it. Which, by the way, why would that even be a consideration? Why would it be, can we afford to stay on this freaking planet? Who would even try to wrap their head around that? Can we afford money, a creation by man? Can we afford to freaking stay on this planet? The only thing holding us back is the thing that we created that makes zero sense. And by the way, even if you want to look at it from an economic perspective, we have the resources. They're just choosing not to do it. That's what this paragraph really means. It's a nice way of saying, well, people are worried about how we're going to pay for it because they're capitalist psychos. That's not even really a factor on every level imaginable. It's not a factor because life on this planet depends on it. It is not a factor because actually we can, quote, afford all these things many times over anyway. Without taking into account the economic benefits of reduced adaptation costs or avoided climate impacts, global GDP would be just a few percentage points lower in 2050 if we take the actions necessary to limit warming. So there's no reason not to do this. Even from the ridiculous capitalist perspective, no, it would actually be better for everyone. And that's the thing. When people look at this, this is going to completely, and look, I've had debates on this show about this very topic. When people are like, oh yeah, no, we're going to live like we're Amish, all of us. It's not going to freaking happen. Nor should it. Why should it? There's no reason. We have the technology to go beyond fossil fuels. We just have to master it. And if you pull the plug, if you say, hey, 3 years, we're done, and guess what? I guarantee you there's going to be planes that run on water or hydrogen or whatever else real quick. There's going to be cars that are full electric and efficient in doing so real quick. They're going to master battery efficiency real freaking quick. That's what they're going to do because they know that whoever does it first is sitting on a gold mine and then some. They know that. They know that. We don't have the technology. Yeah, we freaking do. You really think we peaked it? No. No way. And that's what this IPCC report is basically saying. They're saying we would win in every way imaginable if we actually took climate change seriously. We would win. First of all, we would win as a species because we'd be able to stick around a long time. And also economically, there's no reason not to do it. For those of you who are concerned about that. I don't know why that would be a concern when it comes to life on this planet, but whatever. People are conditioned. All right. So, last story today, and this will actually kind of be a to be continued a little bit. Um, because we're going to be talking to the person involved with this. She's going to be on the show coming up here in the future. But this goes into the digital rights space. Are you familiar with the concept of cross platform surveillance? Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, different apps that you might have on your phone can view other apps on your phone and can track you. It can do whatever else. It can access various information and then it makes decisions accordingly. Now, you get this a lot of times when you just download any old app. I'm sure we all get that on our phones. You download an app and it says this app would like to do blah, 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 and you have the permission to allow or decline. Now, I often decline unless it's something that app needs. If it's something like I allow my Google Maps app to, to know my location so that it can give me directions to where I'm going. And look, I have a really bad sense of direction. I live in Los Angeles. Not gonna lie, I freaking need it. All right, I use Google Maps all the time, so I allow that app to do that because I need it. But these other apps where it's just like, we want your contacts, we want this, we want that, I always decline that. Like, you don't freaking need that. You ain't getting it unless it's appropriate. I ain't giving it to you. If I want to find one of my contacts, I'll do that on my own. Speaking of contacts, you like them? I'm getting better at them. But anyway. So you get that on most apps, and apps can they can do cross surveillance. So here's something that happened recently to a dominatrix, not just any dominatrix, but a UCLA researcher who is also a PhD. Dominatrix says she was banned from ordering DoorDash, and here's the screenshot of their account being deactivated. A tech researcher at UCLA is claiming DoorDash disabled their account for engaging in sex work, according to a Twitter thread. Now, the thread said, "Love to be a whore," with a 0 for the O there. And this is from Dr. Snow, who is going to be on this show. I've been messaging with her through Twitter. She's going to be coming on the show soon to kind of not just tell her story in this case, but also talk about her other work. She works for an internet research organization at UCLA that I was not familiar with, but I kind of perused their website for a bit, and they're doing incredibly fascinating work. It looks like they do work in the digital rights sphere. She does work in the surveillance sphere, and that's going on at UCLA. So we're going to talk about this experience that she had, as well as some of her other research. But in this thread, Dr. Snow, a professional dominatrix and researcher at the UCLA Center for Critical Internet Inquiry, that's the place I just mentioned, said that her account on Caviar, which is owned by DoorDash, was previously disabled for a violation of the terms and conditions on the app. The specific violation was never disclosed. Snow claims that this is because of cross-platform data sharing. Apps never admit to sharing data, but they do, and sex workers in particular are usually like the test population for a lot of these technologies. My guess is that DoorDash, there's some shared database. So because she was a sex worker and because she maybe had some apps related to that, DoorDash decided, okay, we don't want you to use our service because they can surveil other things on your phone. So that's happening. That's a thing. That's a thing that happens. Let's see if there's anything else to this. Surveillance in tech spaces has been happening for like 20 years now, even before social media was at the level where it is now, Snow said. PayPal has somehow managed to sniff out sex workers and freeze their accounts and seize their funds. Banks do it a lot. Chase is notorious for this. Payment platforms like Cash App and Venmo, they do that. A number of sex workers replied to Snow's tweet with their own experiences. This is a big reason I don't use them. They deactivated my account once and provided no reason, no explanation. Not even it was flagged by our security algorithm in error, just nothing. Flag couldn't be removed right away, so I was just screwed out of the lunch I needed. Now, this could happen to anyone. You might be watching, you might be like, well, Ron, I'm not a sex worker. It is, well, first of all, this sort of thing should disturb you that there's this much Orwellian overreach going on your phone. But second of all, this could happen to anyone for whatever reason. And by the way, we see stuff like this happen in different arenas all the time. We see stuff like this happen. Somebody talks about a certain thing on their shows, and all of a sudden, their PayPal account is disabled. Or there's an organization for some kind of peace effort or something like that. Their PayPal account is disabled. Their Venmo's disabled, whatever else. This is happening all the time. And a lot of this is because of cross platform surveillance, like this case we just looked at. So I look forward to having Dr. Snow on the show and discussing all of this in greater detail. So that's coming up, folks. That is coming up. I believe in May. That's coming up in May. She's going to be on the show. We're going to do a longer interview. That's going to be a deep dive into this particular story and a deep dive into her work. Guys, that has been the show for today. First of all, tour dates. I got them. Don't wait. Get your tickets now. Do not wait. I was up at 5 in the morning, my time, doing radio in Toronto. Come on. All right. What do I got coming up? Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, April 16th. Toronto, April 18th. Ottawa, April 20th. Montreal, April 21st. Burlington, April 22nd. Portland, April 23rd. That's Portland, Maine, by the way. Boston, April 24th. New York City, baby, April 25th. And new West Coast, by the way, hold tight. Hold tight, West Coast. And also, I will be part of the Fringe Festival in Iceland, the Reykjavik Fringe Festival. That's happening June 24th through July 3rd. I don't have my exact show dates yet, but as soon as I have them, I will be posting all the information. But for now, I look forward to seeing you in Reykjavik in the summer. But in the meantime, April, get your tickets now. Northeast in Canada, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Burlington, Portland, Boston, New York City. Get your tickets, romplacone.com. Chris Moen opens all those shows. Lauren Ashcraft will be in Pittsburgh and New York, and Jill Stein will be joining me for a tune in Boston, romplacone.com. If you want to support this show on the sustainability end, patreon.com/romplacone. For a Give What You Can level, you get all kinds of cool perks. You get all kinds of, you get patron streams once a week, and you get a patron Zoom show every so often, and I'll make you a theme song, and that's all for a Give What You Can level. And I drop all my stuff on Patreon. Like everything I do, everything I post, every podcast, every beach walk, every video, every stand-up clip, and you get stand-up clips not available anywhere else, by the way. But everything I post regularly, I also post on Patreon, every article, you name it, because I want it to be easy for people to be able to find everything. So if you got an extra $1 a month, again, it's a Give What You Can level, can be as low as $1 a month. If you got an extra $1 a month, please consider throwing it my way. I want to build a community. I want to help keep the show on the air. If everybody who watches this show and listens to this show would give just $1 a month, just $1 a month, that's less than a cup of coffee in most cases. Just $1 a month. I know times are tough, but if you got an extra $1 a month to spare, it would go a long way in keeping this show on the air for a long, long time. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for being here. And you know the drill. In the meantime, Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace, love, and a general strike.